Yes, Impactors. Welcome to Online Impact. A big thanks to everyone who came to the Tuesday night social rooms. I heard that there was a lot of fun going on in the Harry Potter Appreciation Society, mainly Draco Malfoy related, but I'll let that slide. We also had the Have I Got News For You quiz room where esteemed politicians like Boris Johnson turned up and took part in that 3-part quiz. We also had My Football Manager social room where we put together our dream teams, got our transfers in ready for our tournament this coming week. And then there was the origami social room where they made birds and tweeting things out of paper. This Tuesday night, the Tuesday night social rooms will be back open 7:30 till 8:30 on Zoom. You can find the link at impactyouth.co.uk. And those rooms are going to continue for at least another week before we all come back together again and maybe get some new room options, maybe decide where we're going. So if you didn't come last week to the Tuesday night social, that's absolutely fine. You can come, you can go to a group that you want to go to, you can kind of pick up, follow what's going on in that group, and then we'll be resetting the groups in a week's time. This week on Zoom, we finally met the Challenge Master. And unbelievably, we came out on top. Impact picked up the win that we needed, sent him packing on his way. I'm sure we will not be hearing anything from the Challenge Master ever again.
The Challenge Master.
I suppose we're going to have to wait and find out next week to see what the Challenge Master has in store for us. For now though, let's go to the Bible. Join me for the Upside Down Kingdom. So last week we started our series in Matthew chapter 5 and we were looking at the Beatitudes that Jesus is teaching on the Mount. In verse 3, Jesus said, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." But this week we're looking at verse 4. "Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted." Now before we go into detail a little bit more of verse 4, I want to take a step back and look at the Beatitudes in a bit of a fuller picture first. And for that, I'm going to need this. Now, I've got a secret sandwich here, and I'll show you that in a minute. But first of all, I want us to look at verse 4 and see what those who mourn get. Those who mourn receive comfort. So as we read this, we might think, hold on, things are changing a little bit now. Jesus is moving on. He's talking about something else. And that's where I've got this sandwich to come and help us. Now, what I want us to make sure we're not doing is that in these verses that we're going to be looking at over the next few weeks, verses 4 to 9, I don't want us to think that we're moving away from the kingdom of heaven. It's a little bit like this sandwich. We'll call it the kingdom sandwich. I'm sure sandwiches in the kingdom of heaven would be way better than this. But Jesus starts with the reward, the kingdom of heaven. And that's like the top of the sandwich, right? And he ends in verse 10 with the reward being the kingdom of heaven. But everything in between, all these verses that we find between verse 3 and 10 are still part of this kingdom, still part of this kingdom sandwich. So for example, let's just take verse 4 out of the passage for a minute. "Those who mourn shall be comforted." It feels completely separate to what Jesus has been talking about with his kingdom, but actually that isn't what's going on. When Jesus is explaining verses 4 down to 9 and the rewards being a little bit different, they are actually all part of what's going on in Jesus' kingdom. So as we look at verse 4, what should we be thinking? Okay, Jesus is still talking about his kingdom. He's talking about what makes up his kingdom. All of these verses begin with the same word, blessed. And we talked about last week how that wasn't just feeling happy. It was more of a God's big approval. God gives a big thumbs up. And this week, it's for those who mourn. When we think about people who mourn, I imagine we're thinking about people at funerals. Now, I'm not sure that that's going to best help us understand what it feels like to be someone who mourns, because maybe you guys have never experienced being at a funeral. And if you have been to a funeral before, you might not have felt the things that maybe the movie suggests that you do feel. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to list some examples of people in the Bible who have been mourning and ways that they described it made them feel. And I want you to see whether you've ever felt something like that before. Mourning is that feeling where you can't eat, that you can't drink. Mourning is that feeling that comes to you when you think about the worst thing that you have ever done. Mourning is that moment where you just cry out to the sky, why? What is going on? Mourning is feeling like you're worth absolutely nothing. Now, you might not have been to a funeral. You might not have felt what you thought you should have felt at a funeral. But I imagine you've felt one of those things before. I get that feeling where I can't eat and I can't drink. It comes when I know that there is absolutely nothing I can do in my situation. It feels completely upside down and I'm just like, what do I do? When I think of that feeling about the worst thing that I've ever done and my mind goes back there and I just kind of recoil in on myself. There are times when I cry out to the sky and I think, why? What is going on? This is not the way that I planned life to be. It shouldn't be like this. And then I have those moments where I feel like I'm worth absolutely nothing. Have you felt something along those lines of mourning? You might have felt something along those lines of mourning, but Jesus wants to ask you a deeper question today. Have you felt those things about your sin towards God? Because this word that Jesus uses for mourning, it kind of means rock bottom. And not just rock bottom in your life because of the things that are happening there, but rock bottom when you think about your relationship with God. You might have listened last week and gone, yeah, I'm spiritually skint. I'm poor in spirit. I know that I've got nothing to bring to God. But have you ever mourned over your sin? Have you ever felt rock bottom when it comes to your sin in your relationship with God? This word of mourning, those examples that I've used from the Bible of what it feels like, they can't eat, they can't drink because God's people are just not living with him. They're crying out to the sky going, God, you are not answering us, and that's because of us. We've done this to ourselves. It's feeling rock bottom about your own sin. It's about feeling rock bottom about the sin of everything that's going around you. The brokenness between you and God and the brokenness between the world and God should make you feel like those things of mourning. Do you feel these ways about your sin? Because this is a big part of what it means to be in Jesus' upside down kingdom. Those who mourn feel rock bottom about their sin, about the sin of the world around them, and they realise just how big of a gap it is between them and God. But blessed, God approves of those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. You see, again, that's where this upside down kingdom is so different to the world that we're living in. People don't mourn at their own sin and the sin in the world and think about it in the way that cuts them off from God. And so that's why it's really key to understand that difference of what's going on. Not just bad things that are happening in your life that are not going to plan, but it's realizing that degree of separation between you and God because of sin. For a Christian, they know that their biggest problem is their broken relationship with God because of their sin. There is that peace and comfort of knowing that the greatest thing has been fixed between you and God. That brings great comfort now when life feels like it's all out of control and my plans are not going the way they should. There is comfort knowing that God is in control and God has promised to look after his people. There's great comfort in those big make or break moments in your life where maybe you're picking about what university you're going to go to or what subjects you're going to be studying. But also on that bigger scale, it's this forever comfort about your sin. Knowing that as you feel rock bottom about the things that you've done, your broken relationship with God, knowing that there is no hope for you, yet seeing this verse and realizing that Jesus has come to comfort those who feel rock bottom. Isaiah 61 verse 1-4 is a great passage to look at. It's talking about the kind of coming king, the coming Messiah, and what's he going to be like? Well, prophesied years before Jesus comes, he's going to comfort those who mourn. He bore all our grief, all our sorrows, all of our sin at the cross. He knows what it feels like to mourn over not just your sin, but the sins of the world. At the cross, Jesus carries his people's sin on his shoulders, and he feels that full force of separation. He cries out, "My Father, why have you forsaken me?" And that is a mind-blowing thing to think about. The person who you have wronged that has made you feel rock bottom would take all that away from you and comfort you and bring you close, speak tenderly to you. If you're a Christian, God's Spirit is with you, comforting you, bringing to mind Jesus, bringing to mind the cross, and ensuring that when you feel rock bottom, you're comforted because of what Jesus has done for you. Blessed are those who mourn. Blessed are those who feel rock bottom at their sin, for they shall be comforted, both now and forevermore. Thanks for tuning in to Online Impact this week. As you head back over to Zoom, there will be another one of those Slido questions. Thank you so much to everyone who answered that question last week. I think for our discussion group, it was really good at just kind of getting us going, getting us talking. Don't worry, it's a completely anonymous question, so you're kind of just putting it out there so that everyone can see kind of how the group is responding to this talk. Don't forget about the social rooms on Tuesday night at 7:30 till 8:30. Come and join us. It's a good load of fun. And then next week on Zoom, I'm sure we'll have a visit from the Challenge Master again, and we'll be continuing our series in the Upside Down Kingdom. Thanks for watching, guys. I'm going to head you back over to Zoom.